Hello everybody, welcome back. Jim here again. If you were here last time for the video I did on the things that I like most about living in Japan and in Tokyo in particular, this time around I'll be going over some of the things that I don't like so much about living here, and they definitely don't outweigh the good, but there are some things that can be irritating and off-putting, and I've seen these things drive other people to anger and motivate them to leave the country altogether. So again, I'll preface this by saying, yes, I've spent most of my time here in Japan, 6+ years, living in Tokyo, and that's a different experience from living in more rural areas, which I also have some experience with. So I can say just from my personal experience that yes, they are different beasts altogether. But mostly I'm referring to Tokyo. You might be able to apply this to other major metropolitan areas like Kyoto or Sapporo, Nagoya, places like that. Anyway, let's get started with some of the things that I don't like so much about living here. And the first thing at the top of the list is that it can be rather crowded. And I grew up in a fairly small southern town. I think the population is about 11,000. It's not a terribly crowded area, and everybody drives everywhere. That's kind of typical of the States, though. Every city or town you go to, you really need to drive to get anywhere. So I wasn't accustomed to being somewhere as densely populated as Tokyo is. I think it's the most densely populated city in the world. If not, it's definitely in the running for that title. So extremely crowded. If you go to like any kind of thing that is like a tourist attraction, something like that, something that's going to attract a lot of visitors. I go to Tokyo Game Show every year, and I really love it, but good lord, you're shoulder to shoulder with really sweaty, stinky nerds all day long, and especially if you want to wait in line for anything, to play any games or anything like that. And then coming back from that, and this is really the worst, the crux of my issue with the crowding here is the trains. I'm sure everybody has seen some of those videos of Japanese trains and subway cars just being packed like a can of sardines with people, and that happens quite often, especially early in the morning and into the evening after people are getting off work. Everybody's trying to go home, which is typically when I finish school. It's just ass to crotch. Everybody is getting real intimate with each other, and I don't find that enjoyable at all, especially when you have to be stuck up against some weirdos. One time I was crammed up next to a guy that was eating his own hair, which was really alarming, very disconcerting. I just assumed that maybe he was sick or something. He was missing big patches of hair on his head, but then he started pulling them out one at a time and putting them in his mouth, and I was pressed up against him, and I was just like, please get off at the next stop, because I was on that train for like the next hour to get home. So but especially, coming back from Tokyo Game Show was the most crowded, horrible train station I've ever been in my entire life. It was a very uncomfortable train ride. And a lot of the train rides can be uncomfortable if you're going through the city or going to an area that attracts a lot of people. If you go out for a festival or something like that, those are always fun, but again, super duper crowded. So I don't like that so much. Again, I come from a more rural area. I like my personal space. I like to have wide open, a lot of room to roam, and I don't have that here, and it's something I miss. But you learn to live with it. Again, the cons not outweighing the pros, but that definitely is something that really irritates me sometimes. Is I look at that train all full of people, and I say to myself, you know what, I guess I don't really need to go home right now. Maybe I'll just stay out for another couple of hours. And that's usually, maybe the train might be the reason I drink. I don't know, but yeah, sometimes taking that train home is a daunting task. Next up, this is a really common complaint that I hear from a lot of people, that it is expensive to live here. Some people say they don't find it to be so expensive. Again, I think it really depends on where you came from and your experiences growing up in wherever it was in the States or Europe, Canada, wherever you might come from. Again, I came from the rural South, where it is pretty cheap to live, or at least, renting homes. Like, just for example, here in the city, I live in a pretty small apartment that accommodates myself. At max, it can maybe accommodate another person, but it is rather small, and the rent is about the same as what my parents are paying right now for their house in Louisiana. So they're paying for a house, I'm paying for a little, one-room apartment, which I've done a tour of my apartment before. That's up on the channel. A lot of people watched that and commented that, wow, yeah, that's a really tiny living space. I don't know if I could, be crammed into a place like that all the time. So yeah, it can be expensive to live here, but again, depending on your perspective and how much money you have, expensive is a subjective thing. As far as like going out, partying, having a good time, food and drinks, everything like that, it can be expensive, but I don't think it's more expensive than any other place. Nightlife areas, typically, everything's going to be overpriced, the drinks and the food and all that. So, yeah, I think, again, subjective. However much money you have, whatever your experiences have been before coming here, you might think it's an expensive place, but if you're from, New York or LA or something like that, you might not think it's all that expensive, really. If you come from another place where, like, property values are really high, you're going to pay like $1,000 a month for rent for a little studio apartment or something. This, in Tokyo, you can find like apartments to rent that aren't terribly expensive. You can, $500, $600, something like that. My own is like $700, which a lot of people said is a lot for the amount of space I've got. But as long as I'm just, I just need to accommodate myself, that's tolerable. But yes, it can be expensive to live here or to visit here as a tourist. You're probably gonna, end up leaving a lot of money behind. But just be cognizant of that, and be fiscally responsible, and work within your budget, within your means. And I don't think that's really going to be much of a problem. So yes, it can be expensive, but not altogether impossible or unreasonable. Okay, next up, this is another thing that a lot of people bring up, and I'll preface this by saying that the vast majority of people you will encounter here, just like any other place in the world, are going to be perfectly decent, nice, respectful, accommodating people. That being said, a lot of people that come from afar, from wherever it is, from the West or from other areas of the East, they tend to pick up on a certain amount of xenophobia when they get here. And I will say that, yes, to a certain extent, that's true. I have had some unpleasant experiences myself. I know friends of mine that have had some very unpleasant experiences being turned down for an apartment because they did not want to rent an apartment to a foreigner. Even though over the phone they thought he was Japanese because he speaks Japanese so well. He's been living here for well over 10 years. So on the phone they thought he was a Japanese man. But when they came to find out that he was not, he was actually Caucasian, they refused to rent an apartment to him. I've been called some mean names by some kids, actually, when I was living in Odawara. Some like middle school kids seemed to think it was pretty cool to yell some stuff at me. I think a lot of the time, though, most people they have these interactions with older Japanese people, and it's kind of unsettling because it becomes really obvious that they're uncomfortable in your presence. They are visibly shaken and unnerved And I can say at least once I've had a clutched purse. A woman, I guess, thought I was going to rob her as I was walking up to the vending machine that was just down the stairs and around the corner from my apartment. As I approached the vending machine and put my hand in my pocket to get the change out of my pocket, and it wasn't like a subtle move, it was a pretty violent reaction. She almost fell over herself, clutching her purse with fear that I was gonna mug her or something, in broad daylight in front of a busy street with tons of witnesses. But so I've had experiences like that. People describe what they call the gaijin bubble, where it seems like the people around you, keep you at arm's length. They're a little uncomfortable with your presence. You might be on a train that isn't crowded, and a seat will be open next to you, and everybody opts to stand instead. I've heard that complaint a lot. I've had that experience a number of times. That happens sometimes, but again, I say the vast majority of people are perfectly decent, respectful people, but you do have those run-ins with the occasional person who might be xenophobic. They might be a bit of an asshole. They might be racist for all I know. But that's not going to happen the majority of the time. I do know, I can say this as well. The effect this will have on you varies from person to person. I personally, again, like I said, I grew up in the Deep South. I have plenty of first-hand experiences with racism and racist people. And, I was kind of not horribly, I wasn't driven to, kill myself or anything, but I was bullied in school, and I've been called every name in the book. So just through those experiences, I guess I've kind of developed a specific mindset about that kind of thing, where it doesn't hurt me so much. I've kind of developed some thicker skin, but some people will take experiences like that more to heart. Again, just an anecdotal story. When my first semester at a school I was going to in Shinjuku, that day I met a guy. It was his first semester there as well, and he had come from the States. It was his first time ever being in Japan, and when I had asked him what had attracted him to come here, he explained to me that for most of his life he'd been a fan of anime and manga and video games and J-pop and all that. He was really into the Japanese pop culture, and so he had always wanted to come here and experience Japan. But he was also, I guess you could say, he was a pretty sensitive guy, and within at the beginning of the next semester, so 4 to 5 months, I guess, he had decided to leave the country, to quit that school and go back to the States. And he had, I asked him why, and he described for me a number of incidents where either something had been said to him, or the way people had reacted to him, or people not wanting to sit next to him on the train. And he took that very personally, very to heart, and it really changed his whole perspective of Japan, which I think is unfortunate that, because I think, to put things in perspective, he had a lot of great experiences here as well, but those handful of experiences really stuck out in his mind, and it was enough to make him want to quit school and leave and go back to the States. So, that can happen. So again, it depends on how sensitive you are to these things, because you'll probably run into something you don't like at some point. It's not, we don't all live in cotton candy houses out here, as Norm Macdonald might say. So yeah, there are people here, and sometimes people are assholes, and it's up to the non-assholes to deal with that kind of thing. So that's just something to keep in mind, that you might run into a bit of xenophobia, nationalism, even racism, potentially. I'm not saying it's gonna be all blatant all around you all the time, but it does happen sometimes. And last, this isn't really something that I dislike about living in Japan, but more so just missing little things from home, the kind of experiences you can't have here, or just something as simple as missing your family, which I do quite often, missing your friends, which I do, missing the old activities that you used to enjoy together that you can't do anymore. And also, I mean, missing being around people who completely understand you all the time. I do speak Japanese, and I am still learning, but there's a lot that's lost in translation as of right now, and sometimes it's hard to be understood, and that can really kind of muddy, your personal relationships when you're friends with someone, but they don't really understand you all the time. There's a little bit that's lost there, and then there are other things, just food related for one. I'm from southern Louisiana. My mother and father and my aunts and uncles and a lot of my cousins, they're all really good cooks. They cook Cajun food really well. It's kind of prerequisite of living there, is you have to at least learn how to make a gumbo and a sauce piquant and things like that. So I desperately miss Cajun food. I've been to a restaurant here, and they had gumbo on the menu, so I gave it a shot, and it was just, it wasn't up to snuff. I'll put it that way. And then other, like, stupid things. You miss your favorite fast food places, and, just stuff like that. But for the most part, I just miss, my friends that I only get to see really when I go home for holidays. The same thing with my family. I miss specific foods and specific things with family gatherings and stuff like that. So there are things that you miss about home. That's not something I dislike about Japan. That's just kind of comes with being so far from home, is you do sometimes get a little bit homesick, and that's definitely the case with me from time to time. But really that's it. That kind of wraps up my dislikes, and I guess you could say that for me they're all kind of minor. The positives definitely outweigh the negatives, at least for now. I'm a young fellow going to school, enjoying life at the moment. I'm sure at some point I'm going to turn into like an old, bitter, person who doesn't enjoy life as much as I do now, and I'm going to be like, to hell with this, I'm moving back home, back to the country. I'll be some old curmudgeon. I don't want anybody to bother me. I don't like it so crowded. Rabble. But for the time being, no, I'm very happy to be here. I would encourage people who are interested in coming here, come on over. Maybe come for like a vacation at first, because that's always the most fun. You get here, you got a week, and then you spend that entire week just doing all of the most fun, cool, crazy things that you can find to put on your itinerary, and then you leave with a great impression of the place. And that's cool. I would recommend experiencing it that way. But if you want to come here to live as well, I say give it a shot. Like I said, I've known people that they didn't care for it, and they left within 4 or 5 months. And I know people that absolutely love it, who have been here for decades, and they swear they'll never live anywhere else. So you never know what kind of experience you might have. But if you come out here, I definitely hope you have the best kind of experience. So thank you, everybody, for listening to me. I know I droned on quite a while on this one. Sorry, I have a tendency to do that. And again, yes, thank you for listening, everybody. Take care. I will see you next time. Goodbye.